Hello and welcome to part 3 of our discussion series, Gracefully Embracing Chaos, brought to you by McKinsey Corporation. I'm here with Jenny and Katie, co-owners of McKinsey Corporation. Today our topic is the importance of authenticity. So let's jump right in. Over the past few years, we've seen authenticity become one of, if not the most significant drivers of brand loyalty, overtaking more traditional attributes like price or brand name recognition. Why do you think brand authenticity has become so important to modern consumers? Let's start with Jenny.
Man, that's a big question out the gate. Why do I think, that's such a unique question. I love that it goes back to our why might that be type of thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think that I think that the ability to share more out there of what's going on, the ability to find out more about what's going on in the world and what's happening in the world. There's more choices out there that consumers have. So they really want to make sure that they are partnering with companies that are aligned with what they believe and how they feel about things. And so just having the ability, I mean, the same way that we're asking the why might this be, what's going on, I think that this, and I'm going to say even next generation, because it's not, the millennials just or whoever, but it's just this new, I'll just say generation of people are asking, what do people stand for? What's going on? And where do businesses fit in the middle of all this? Because I think that as we have so much going on in the world right now, it's easy to say, well, then businesses are just going to sit over here on the side and just sell their products and do their things. They are part of the ecosystem. They're part of the mix. And so, which is bigger than why is this happening, but for brands to just sit on the side and not be part of the conversation, that is not an option. So I think consumers are demanding it and just starting to ask of how do you feel about these things that are going on and who are you for real?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point. It seems like it comes back to products and brands are becoming a bigger part of people's lives in general, yes. Not just making a purchase, using the product or service, and then moving on as people are feeling directly connected. So I think that's a great point. Katie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that, no, I mean, very similar to what Jenny was saying. I think that people today, and again, I agree with Jenny, I don't think it's just one generation versus another, because I do think that some of the maybe consumer behaviors of younger generations are starting to then different generations or older generations are starting to realize the value of what they're talking about around even, let's talking about like the sustainability, where our products are coming from, what's in our products in terms of thinking about health and what we're putting in our bodies. People are just more aware in different ways. And again, I think that it's because there are so many options out there now too. And so I think that just the consumers are just demanding it more and more, because we actually do realize as well that our voice is going to matter, and that where you spend will start to, shift, and organizations or brands are going to have to start, falling more in line with certain types of products that are being offered out there.
And so I think this transitions well into another topic, which is, I think honesty and transparency are two significant or big parts, and I'd say almost obvious parts of authenticity. Is that when you think of brand authenticity, you think of they're telling the truth, they're telling us how they're involved. As Jenny had mentioned, there's so much going on in the world at large that brands can't just sit on the sideline. We need to know where you stand on things. We need to know how you're involved.
Yeah.
Looking more, I think, to the less obvious things in terms of brand authenticity, sometimes we look to do you actually live up to the expectations that you set for yourself? Mm-hmm. Are you genuinely a part of the market or world in which you exist? Right. Katie, what are some of the other areas of brand authenticity that might be less obvious than that honesty and transparency?
Yeah, I think true alignment with what you state as your like values or I think the corporate values and like what you say that you stand for. So if we said, for example, if we talk, for example, about, let's say Disney, and Disney talks about creating these lifelong memories, and they have so many things about it. But when you go there and if there's a misalignment of some of the cast members and the people walking around, and you're treated a certain way, that starts to be like where you start to say, but this is what you've always said that you stand for, and you're not getting that. Now, again, with Disney, I feel like that never happens, and they are really a great example of a brand that truly, exemplifies who they say that they are through every sort of interaction. But I just really think that value alignment and how it trickles down to every single person within the organization, and how it comes out from the customer experience standpoint. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
Anything to build?
I think consistency. I mean, I think that, and part of this is, which I don't know, we might get into a little bit later, but if you're living and breathing, and I think they always say, like, just tell the truth, it's easier to remember. I mean, here's the deal. Like, if it really is, I mean, this is what we stand for, this is what we believe, and it's coming through authentically. I think so many brands are trying to figure out, like, how can we be authentic? How can we be authentic? I mean, truly just, I mean, the definition is just do what you would do, what you believe, and it starts coming down and consistently doing that. Because the thing that's very confusing, and I think where people then are getting distrustful of some brands, is if they come out and they say, we believe in this, we believe in the customers, we stand for this, but then, like, over time that kind of wanes down and they're not doing it. I'm more intrigued by the ones that are have been doing it for a really long time, because it is crazy. I mean, even in this family business world that we're in, there's a lot of good businesses doing incredible things for a long, long time. They're not talking about it, and they're saying, well, we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to be boastful about it. I'm like, but this is what you live and breathe and do on a daily basis. So I think consistently doing and living your brand is what's going to get people to trust you over time.
Yeah, I think in general with social media or whatever the social climate, there's a challenge for individuals to be their authentic self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that carries over and it's similar to brands as well? That either be it trying to keep up with what other people are doing, or it's difficult to nail down and define what exactly you are? Are there similarities between an individual's difficulty being their authentic selves and a brand trying to do the same thing?
I would think so. I mean, I think that, I think just in general, it's also then like, especially from a brand, because you have so many different types of consumers, right? And so the hard thing is that you're never going to please everybody, right? And so how you take a stand on how you exemplify those values and what you're doing and where your support goes as a brand and how you're handling certain types of things is the same type of thing that would happen at an individual or personalized level as well. But I believe that coming back even to what Jenny was saying there is just saying this is who we are, and the consumers who we resonate with are going to be the ones who will be part of our kind of tribe, and the ones that we aren't, then we're not the right fit for them. And that's the same type of thing as individuals as well. And so I do think it's needing to be consistent about, as Jenny said, about how you exemplify kind of who you are as a brand. But I would think that it is a struggle to be able to balance all of that.
And Katie, you brought up a great point about the challenge of having a broad range of consumer groups to connect with and communicate with, and to be okay with taking a stance or having a brand personality and maybe it not being a fit for certain people, not trying to please everybody. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I think it's important for brands to remember, is that customer perception is reality. That the way that brands intend to be perceived, or they intend their actions to be received, may not be the case, and it may not be received the way that they intended. So Jenny, what are some ways that customer feedback or customer insights can be used to strengthen a brand's authenticity initiatives or efforts?
Well, I think it's a really good point with the brand perception, right? Brand perception is reality. Though I do want to say the one thing, and I think Kate kind of mentioned a little bit, you cannot please everybody. And I think if you're chasing your tail, trying to please them, that is something that is just going to exhaust a brand. So we need to, I think, similar to what we were talking about last time, is growing in purpose. So make sure that we know what we stand for. This is our core that we come back to. And I think a couple of things. One, it switches around a lot between an individual and a brand, but I think that it's similar. We control the intent of which we put something out, right? I mean, of individually or as a business, we control the intent by which it goes out. I cannot control how it gets perceived on the other end, that people are going to take things different way, or some people are going to like it or not like it. That I cannot control necessarily, but I do need to be aware of what the other people and how they are receiving, interpreting, and understanding. Because if my intent is to put on a message that says, we care about the environment, or we care about our customers, or we want your feedback, that's the intent of the message that I'm putting out. And then I need to now measure and see what was the intended piece out there, or what if my brand says that we are, back to Disney, we're creating magical moments based on this. I need to go back to the customers and say, after having experienced our brand, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And getting feedback from there. Because if they're not having the intended perception that we were meaning for them to have, then we need to be aware of that. It doesn't necessarily mean if they're feeling this way that now we have to change our message, change who we are. We're not necessarily changing who we are, but we want to make sure that I've got this intent of putting this message out, and is it landing appropriately? Because I think that a lot of brands will sit inside, which is fine, in their marketing department and their creative team, and they'll say, well, we want to feel, at McKinsey, we want everybody after dealing with McKinsey to feel three things. We want them to feel that they're dealing with experts, that they know more about their business than they did before they were working with us, and we want them to feel energized about the next step. That's what we want to have happen. We always go back to, what do we want them to know, feel, and do? Well, we can sit here after this and say, this is how we made everybody feel, but unless we go back and ask them, we might not be having that. So if at the end they say we're confused and we don't know what you guys were talking about, it doesn't mean that we change the three things that we want people to feel. It means we might just have to adjust and adapt a little bit to make sure we're having the intended. So customer feedback is making sure, and have that part of the process is making sure that we understand, is the message that we're putting out having the intended that we want it to have out there on the other end. Not then just shifting and focusing. And if we're by accident offending someone or upsetting people or figuring that out, we also, while we might not be for everybody, we need to know what's out there, because one way or the other, they're talking to each other, they're talking to others, they're spreading things out there. And I think that back to what causes people to be stressed out and concerned is when they don't have control over something. The way to have control is to gather feedback, know what's happening, and then you can make your own approach. So, I kind of covered a lot there. Hopefully not confusing. Yeah.
Anything to add, Katie?
No, I think Jenny was spot on with that. I feel that having feedback opportunities throughout the whole journey and life cycle is also the important part, right? So it's not just testing like the messaging, the marketing messaging at the beginning, or how the sales experience was. It's throughout the whole entire experience is how people are engaging and interacting with your product or service is the right thing. In all authenticity, I don't know if you can hear it, but my child is now making a smoothie. So that's true authenticity of us recording a video while we are working from home. So I apologize if you can hear that. That's my true authenticity in the middle of my recording.
Well, I think one of the other things that comes to mind when I hear you guys talking about this is you do need to reach out and hear from the customers. It needs to be strategic then, because a lot of times when people say, I'll do a follow-up study, and then they kind of ask like, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your experience? If you've got a specific objective, if you're trying to see, hey, was this marketing piece effective in delivering the message that we want? On a scale of 1 to 10, how overall was the experience isn't going to answer that question.
Yep.
So when we sit with brands and we're strategically planning their project, a lot of times it's really challenging to narrow down and to say, what's that ultimate goal you want to accomplish? And it's easy to say, I want to do all these things. And yes, we too want to do all of these things. But if we don't specifically pick, when we gather that feedback, it's going to be so high level, you're not going to be able to do anything with it. Right. So kind of to Kate's point about Disney is to say, did our staff make you feel moments were magical at XYZ point in time? And when you get that feedback, you're able to then turn around and do something specific with it, be it benchmark the progress you've made from past surveys, or to then have specific areas that you can apply and start to improve.
Right.
And asking the how today, like an open-ended, there might be things that you didn't even think about. So we can say at these moments, right, at check-in, I mean, both of us are past Disney pass holders, so we are definitely authentically loving them. I'm ready for them to open at some point, but safely. But, you know, we can say at each one of these, did this, yes or no, and we can measure the impact of the changes that we have. But I also like opening up to say, what were some of the areas? Because your customers and consumers are thinking things that you would have never really thought about, of then, oh man, I didn't even think about that it was easy in this type of situation, or what was happening.
What I was going to add there too is even then being able to also go that like next layer down. So if we say, describe a magical moment to us, or describe how something like that makes you feel. And because different people are going to have, depending on whatever the word is, everyone's going to have their own kind of internal definition of what that means. And that's, again, that peeling back the layers of the onion to be able to really get that. Because as a brand, if you say, when this is how we define it, right? And that's one of the things we've been really working at McKinsey. This is how we define these words. And that's then what you're measuring against. But if you just say, did you experience a magical moment? But the three of us all may have different definitions of what that means. And so being able to really dig into that, that's then like where the meat of the consumer feedback really comes from.
Yeah.
So one of the other questions I was going to ask is that what are some brands that you feel are authentic? I think that authentically came up throughout the conversation, is hearing some of those. So to close up, I wanted to shift focus a little bit. And as you can see in our discussion, is that a lot of times authenticity, we think of it as outward facing. We talk about, do the customers perceive us as being authentic? How is that being portrayed externally? I think also it's important to remember that it's inward facing as well, is that a big part of authenticity is making sure that our company's internal culture has that element of authenticity. What advice or suggestions would you have for a brand looking to strengthen their internal authenticity? We'll start with Katie.
You know, I really think it has to be something that really is talked about on a very regular basis across the organization. You cannot come up with your like value system and put it on like a little print up and stick it on the walls and then never talk about it again. And so I think that that's been something really that we've been trying really hard ourselves at McKinsey, coming up with our rules of the road with like real life, true examples of what things mean. So it's not just these are the values that we have, but like that we show up on time with our A game and ready to make a huge impact. And so really talking through that, and then finding opportunities to allow each employee to be able to talk about those. And so again, it's not just coming from the top, being talked down to everybody. And so for us, we really, you know, like our team huddles, we have different team members and kind of read or give examples of how we're bringing some of those those values to life, and really trying to do that on a regular basis, because then it becomes a part of each team member's ethos. And that's then where it then is able to go outward if the inside is feeling it as well.
Yeah, I think doing the defining things, you know, as we come through here, we say we're curious at McKinsey, we're collaborative at McKinsey. Those are nice, they're good, they're buzzwords, they're up here, but then we really, Kate and I spent a lot of time saying, what does that look like? What does curiosity at McKinsey look like? What does it look like in action, in sharing examples of what does this mean? That means the asking the questions of why might that be? Collaboration to us just doesn't mean just having a partnership. It means respecting each other and what we do. It means making sure that when the handoff from one department to the next department, that you're having a call with them to do these type of things. Like we're actually spelling out what these things mean. I think that is, and even just in authenticity, outward and inward, it's actually showing it in action again and again and again, so that people can see, oh, that's what they mean when they say we are the highest quality doctors, or we are curious here at McKinsey, or we have remarkable experiences. Left with just a word, then somebody's going to use it back to this perception of they're going to define it in the way that they want to. But we are actually saying this is what it means here for us. And they could say, oh, that's not curiosity. That's just asking too many questions. I don't know, whatever it is. But we're not only saying what the term is, but what does it actually mean of what we've got there. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, and it's a clear picture when I hear you both talking, that leadership almost becomes a pivot point of looking external and internal and applying those same techniques and strategies and the same mentality in wanting to know what your customers think is what does your internal team want to think. And I would say, having been on the team for, I think, about 7 years, You guys have always done a really great job of that. And I can see it within you, but I can also see it within the team members, how challenging that can be at times, because you do put the ball in their court and say, what does this word mean to you? Is that we want this to be a value prop for us. We want integrity to be part of who we are. What does that mean to you? And when we have that discussion internally, the door opens to a number of different ideas and concepts and definitions that we hadn't thought about that ultimately strengthens the brand identity and authenticity for all of us. So I very much commend you both for walking the walk, is that it's easy to talk the talk, and we tell other brands what they should be doing, and we have these ideas, but you guys implement them internally with us, and I have seen what a big deal and what a huge impact it has. So thank you both for all of those efforts. So that'll wrap up our discussion on the importance of authenticity. We are Gracefully Embracing Chaos, brought to you by McKinsey Corporation. If you have an idea for a topic or a discussion point, please leave a comment or let us know at www.mckinseycorp.com. We'll be back with more. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.